Today I'm talking to you guys about a little more about interior design, but mostly about your careers and what it takes to do this and continue doing the same career for 30 years, you know. I consider 30 years to be when I started architecture school. And why have I stayed in it this long, and why do I still love it the way I do? I think is really important for me to answer. First thing I wanted to tell you, this is Elsy is my company now. And I am from Mississippi. I grew up, I did not have a ton of exposure to design, to the design world, but I found it for myself. I always like to say when I first started out, it was about me loving art, and at an early age, finding out that that's what I was good at. I went to a Catholic school, and I had a sister, Sister Casimir. Everyone hated her. But she loved me because I could draw, and she was super nice to me. I was always very, very shy, but super creative. And in childhood, I think because I had a parent who was very outgoing, like a Lucille Ball kind of mom, but hilarious, I was quiet. And not so quiet anymore, and I embarrass my children all the time, just like my mother did. But what I will say is the town that I grew up in, has anybody read The Help or seen the movie? That's my hometown. So that is where I would have been a baby about the same time that set in, you know, the late 60s. And that was written by Catherine Stockett, who went to high school with me. And I'm very familiar with that place. And having grown up in a space where, as I said, there weren't that many women architects at all when I graduated, there were 7 in the entire state. I found that really drawing from my core being was so, so important. Elsy, the name, can anybody guess what that is? So it's my initials, Lynn Coit, if you say them out loud, LC. It is also my grandmother's name, who was super spunky, always a single mom, and a little bit different. She was a secretary, but she worked her entire life and was a wonderful lady, very close to me. She's no longer with us, but I will tell you, she had an impact in my life because she reared my mother. So in interior design, it started out with decorators years ago. And I remember decorating my room. And my parents would get mad. They'd hear me in my room arranging my furniture again. I would get on the floor and push the furniture with my feet. I would paint, do all kinds of things. I think the first entrepreneurial business I started was babysitting. And I was known as the babysitter who also redecorates your house, whether you want it or not. But from a very early, and I don't know, you're probably like that too. If any of you are interior designers or in the arts at all, you want everything around you to feel and look a certain way. And sometimes, if you're like me, you just can't handle it, you know, when it's not. And so I came from a history of storytelling. In the South, that's what we do. Everything is about how you tell your story. And it's all about people, and everything is somewhat people-focused. I will tell you that when I got out of a preparatory high school, I didn't have the best grades. I had C's. I haven't told my children that, but I had C's. And it was because I had not had a lot of art classes. I wasn't that interested in being in high school. I didn't love it. I wasn't that kid. I was introverted, and I felt like I knew there was something I loved to do, but I drew all the time. So I took my ACT, and they put a piece of paper out with that says what you should go into. And I had, I think, 3 things that it said. It said I should either be a teacher, I should be an artist, or I should be a therapist. Well, what do you do with that when you're like in 11th grade? Well, I went home and I showed my parents and I said, well, this is what it says I should do, and I have a high enough score. I was smart. I just didn't apply myself. And then my dad said, well, if you want to go to college, you're going to be an architect, an accountant, a lawyer, or a doctor, if I'm paying for it. So I said, well, I think I'd rather be an architect out of all, if those are my choices. And so what I did was I applied for architecture school, and I got into a lot of schools, but primarily I went to Mississippi State University, which was one of the best schools at that time, still is a great, great architecture school. Spent 5 years staying up all night, trying to stay in school, and just frankly, some days, just graduate. And I know some of you may be finishing school like Sierra, and it's so hard. But you know, I started architecture school at 17, and all of the students were older than me. And I consider them now I'm thankful they were there because they were pretty much my babysitters. I was always very talented, and I loved what I did. But for me, career path is about knowing what you love and also knowing what you're really good at. So college became kind of a path to an end of, oh, now I'm one of the few women in this. You know, I'm like, this is rare. And, you know, when you're young and in your teens, it's about you, which it should be. But today things are a little different. These are two quotes from Samuel Mockbee, who was my mentor and who taught me. He's a very known architect. He started Rural Studio. He also won, I believe, the MacArthur Award for Architecture, which is one of the highest honors ever given. He is no longer with us, but when he told me the initial sketch is always an emotion and not a concept, the whole concept thing went completely over my head when I was in school. But what I did know was if I was right on a design, I could see it, and I knew it, but sometimes I couldn't describe it. It's not about your greatness as an architect, but your compassion. Samuel Mockbee went out into really rural areas of Mississippi. He used things like highway signs to put roofs on houses. He built a chapel out in the woods, and I was in Rural Studios, students built this chapel where they actually cut down trees and built the chapel out of what they had in the woods. He would do things in architecture school like, Lynn, you have to go to a junkyard, you have to find something that will hold so much weight by tomorrow and build it tonight. And it has to be beautiful, and it has to hold this much weight, and it has to be built out of small objects. So I took tractor pieces, and I had help. Power tools were not my thing. And my now husband was drilling on the porch, and I'm putting this thing together and created a sculpture that I would say, after it was done, I got an A. Because I started realizing it was about the experience and not just my grades or how I did in school. Later on, he really inspired me. This is one of his sketches. And sometimes you don't realize what an impact someone has on you until later when they're not around. That is the house in Mississippi that he designed. This is a sketch that I worked on years later with one of my employees to do a restaurant. And something about it, I was like, gosh, it reminds me of something. Well, I went back and found what it reminded me of and realized that the impact of great art in your lives lasts a long time. And also, he always encouraged me to draw, to use my hands, and realize that I actually needed to have that connection between my hands and my eyes. So I learned that was something I was really good at. But I also, even usually when I speak, and I take notes, I have to be writing. Whether they're great notes or not, there is something there. So don't give that up after you get out of school. Keep drawing. Even if you're on the computer, I love the programs that you guys do where you touch the screen and you can move just about anything and create just about anything, but keep your hands alive. That would be one advice that I would definitely give you. One of the things that about drawing is that when we're on the computer, you see that cow there? This was a client who asked me, it's Jerry Built Burgers. He asked me to do a few different locations in Houston, and this is the interior. It was a bank, and it needed to smell like fresh bagels, and he wanted original artwork, and he was a car dealer, a Mercedes car dealer, going into the fast food business. And how, Lynn, are you going to get people in this building? Well, that is how I got people in. I had 4 concepts. The one he bought was the cow shooting through the building. And the reason I did that, I sat out on the curb for an hour trying to figure it out. I did it because my children want to go in the place with like the lobster on the roof. And that's where that concept came from. That actually is an LED, and it turns red, white, and blue on 4th of July, or red and green on Christmas. And it thrived. That was a very successful concept. And I think that one of the reasons that I've been successful is that in college, I established just a few goals. It only took 3. My first goal, because I'd never had a boyfriend, I was shy and introverted and tall, really tall, was to fall in love for life. So I met my husband in my last year of architecture school, and we're still married today. To graduate and have an architecture interior design firm, I accomplished that by the age of 33. And to have my children. Took a little longer. They're a little harder, and they're actually the hardest, but they're the best. And those were what's important to you in school. Why are you doing this? That's what you really need to think about. Write those goals out, and don't just write goals for your career. This talk is supposed to be what have I done in my profession? It all bleeds together. As a mom, as a wife, as an interior designer, as an owner of a business, as a employer, you can't separate them so easily. People always ask me about life balance, and I am like, oh, just don't worry about that. It will come. And I also will tell you that it's okay to make mistakes. I don't regret anything about my life today. I turned 50. And it was funny, last week I thought I was 52, and one of my employees said, Lynn, you're only 51. I said, my husband said I was 52 because he's 53. And no, I'm 51. So she gave me a year of my life back. But one of the funniest things is, I think examples, was when I got out of school. I was working on the airport, and I was working on a welcoming center that's built in Julesburg, Colorado. And they didn't think, I don't think, that the building was going to get built. So they gave it to me, the person right out of school, and I designed it. And then later on, I left that firm and went to another firm. The building got built, and it looks exactly like what I designed. It's a semicircular building with a tower, and if you're ever driving through Julesburg, you'll see it. I don't know if any of you ever drive towards Chicago, but that's the rest stop that everyone goes to. It was where the Pony Express was. But the mistakes I made in that same firm, one day, I was doing my drawings, and one of the architects comes over and he looks at my drawing, and he said, Lynn, what is this? And it was on sheets of drawings we drew by hand at that point. And I said, that's bob wire. B-O-B. And he said, bob wire? He said, Lynn, it's barbed wire. Well, in Mississippi, everybody calls it bob wire. And he proceeded to tell the entire office, and, But what I realized is my mother had told me, you have to laugh at yourself sometimes and realize you don't know everything. You get out of school, I don't know how often I have people that at work who they'll go, oh no, they'll ask me a question and they'll say, oh, I know that. You know, they're so excited, but sometimes it's about listening and slowing down and realizing that it's okay to make mistakes. It's kind of like skiing. If you don't make mistakes in the beginning, how are you going to become good? And that's okay. And the other thing is that if you go into interior design like I did, I switched over from architecture to interiors mid-career to start a firm. And I did it because I always designed from the inside out. So think about your schooling and what you've been through. And are you designing from the inside out? Do you design from the outside in? Do you like a blank sheet of paper? I hate blank sheets of paper. I like starting with adaptive reuse in buildings that are already there. Like that one was a bank that I turned into a burger joint. That's hugely important. One of the other things, as I mentioned here at your school, and I can't remember his name, but it was Lisa Henry, who was with Noel at the time. One of the most inspirational things that ever happened to me was she asked me to go to Cranbrook, which is in Detroit, which is where Eero Saarinen and Florence Knoll studied and worked. And I didn't know where I was going. I'd never heard of it. I got there. I didn't really even know why I was going there. And I found out that 50 designers from all over the state had been asked to attend this conference with around 50 famous people. And we were called into an auditorium like this, and they said, you don't know why you're here. Well, I'm going to tell you. You're here solely because you're interesting. That was it. And I had the opportunity to sit every night for a weekend with tables, hear great lectures, and sit at a table with like the editor of Metropolitan Home. They weren't all architects either, and they weren't all interior designers. They were the owner or the lead designer for Gibson Guitar, Richard Zappa, who invented the fold-up bicycle, famous architects as well. And I don't know, it changed my life and the way I looked at design. So realizing that take advantage of those opportunities when you're asked, and don't say no, go for it. I remember thinking, oh, do I really want to do this? No. It was life-changing, and I came back and I started my own firm. So who are these people? These are my employees when I started Elsy. I started my first firm and had that for 12 years. It still exists. It's in Chicago, Box Studios, and it's thriving, doing amazing work. But I sold because I wanted to get back to the kind of work that I do. Well, this group here, Nathan and the rest of the ladies, came with me when I left. I walked out of my old studio solely based on a love for design and wanting to get back to doing work in Denver and being with my family. And keeping a sense of humor in those times when it's so stressful, these are the reason I'm successful today. The people that I surround myself with and the people that I bring with me are why I'm here and why I'm an owner and why I do lectures like this. Now I want to show you what they do to me. This is April Fool's. They actually we were putting an ad out, and I was making fun of this picture because the photographer shrunk me. Look how tall I am. The person next to me in that picture is 5'4". So I'm like, what happened to the rest of my body? And I was making fun of the picture, but we had a deadline, so it had to go out. And then I got sick, and I was at home, and then they sent me this. And they even has Nathan in a dress. And having a sense of humor, my employees know that, don't take yourself so seriously. And they don't. And they love their careers. So go get out there and find a boss that really wants to do the same thing you want to do. And look for people that motivate you. This is the team now. They're a little crazy. That's our studio. That's upstairs. I actually own a building at 35th and Tejon. I never thought that I would be able to buy a building, ever. And now we own the studio. I have 2 principals, and a lot of these people will eventually own Elsy, hopefully when I'm off in Mexico somewhere, which I hope is maybe sooner rather than later. But this is at the ASID Awards. So my team, of course, I'm dressed up. I was the past president, and now I'm heading on to a national role. But, you know, really getting into it. Get into everything you do. We've won lots of awards, but now my favorite thing is to watch one of my employees do a project, win an award, and go up there and accept it. Terrified, because I remember feeling that way. And now we share all of those things at Elsy. The other thing is look for opportunities that you thought weren't there. So one of my projects, Solid Fire in Boulder, and the staircase was going to get deleted because it is a stressed concrete slab, and we were not going to be able to cut the hole where the staircase originally was. So we talked about it, and the opportunity was this hole was already here. This is where the crane lifted the materials up, and so we just modified the staircase, utilized the hole, and now it connects the whole company. There's a bleacher area below, there are quiet rooms above. We focus a lot on corporate architecture, but today I brought some things to quickly show you that are more about those opportunities. So this picture is at the same job. They wanted, I want mountains across the whole back wall. How often in design do you get asked for mountains? Whether it's graphic design, whatever. I'm like, can we pixelate them? Can we do something else to them? And we had to show them. There was a Batman in that picture, but the Batman got deleted. But, you know. These are the kind of opportunities that we're thrown into. And so you don't just, projects don't come that are great projects. Projects come in that you make great projects. And this one is a good example of a late night where one of my employees came, she said, Lynn, this is due, and I don't know where I'm going with it. And I said, let's go to the website. Let's look and listen and look at what the client would really want. How do they want to integrate their branding? And we sat down for just a few hours and came up with concepts that actually became the brand. So worked simultaneously. This is the new headquarters for Health Grades downtown, if y'all saw the sign go up. And it's been a success story. You walk off the elevator, it's almost like a Urban Outfitters. It's all software programmers. But implementing the design through Sketch. And I actually tell everyone, don't do it on the computer. When you're designing, try to get your brain just goes so fast. And when you sketch, sometimes it works out better at first. That's my team at the Broncos game after the job was done with the happy clients. These are funny ones because even a bathroom can be fun. This is Kathy Loftus in my office did this for Hybris, and you know, it has character. You gotta have a sense of humor. This is Carmen's job that she just finished for Camp Bow Wow. Have y'all ever heard of that? It's a doggy daycare, and their headquarters is located out of Colorado. So pretty typical, fun tenant finish space, but she took the opportunity with the marketing people to make it great space. Same thing here. Just taking advantage of opportunities and asking if she can put a giant dog on the wall, you know? Sometimes you just have to ask. This was me. This was a rotisserie that we did in Houston, and it was called Aloe, and it's still there. And I said, well, can we put a big chicken across the entire restaurant? Well, this is what it ended up being. But, you know, something sculptural, something creative, and the logo is very, very similar. An example of a sketch Juliana did of one of our projects. And she does everything with marker and pen. That's the real thing. So this is New Alta, which is downtown. The building has very low ceilings, but what was nice about it was that the way we designed it, it looks like the ceilings are higher than they are. Another sketch in that same space, the break room. This is her original. This is what it looks like now. How do you make a break room on the inside of a building look cool? It's hard. This one's fun. This is actually We were in Pret-a-Porter, if any of you, I know y'all have been in it before. We won, 2 years ago with a dress. Well, the dress actually came from the project because this was a ceiling Sarah in my office designed for an office space. And sometimes we like to use what we've already designed if it works out well. So we also did a flower arrangement for Modern in Denver. The original concept we talked about was a Scandinavian coloring book. This is the ceiling in the office. And a lot of our projects we get to do are pretty high-end. Not all offices look like this in Colorado, but I've had the opportunity to do some pretty great ones. I brought Liberty Media with me today because I know you guys are also in media. Liberty Media is my client, and they own lots of things. They own the Atlanta Braves. They own a lot of radio. A lot of TV stations. And this is an experiential center for executives. So the swings, the curved pods, the technology, everything had to be integrated. And there are spaces taking place in Colorado right now that are really cutting edge. We're doing some fun stuff out there. Okay, as a boss, this is what I want. This is what makes me happy. I walked in this guy's office. How long did these computer programmers spend making his birthday walls? I mean, I'm like, this is a fun office. We designed their office, and if those employees feel free to do this, that makes me happy. I walk into spaces all the time, and I see things like that, and it makes me so happy. They're using their space, and they've got character and personality. Take those risks, you know? Those are the things that make you memorable and interesting. Let's see the next one. Okay. This is my passion in my life. These are my children and my husband. And I think we were at Disney World or somewhere. But how do you balance? How do you go about doing all of these things? I know like Sierra down here has little Marlo. And these are the things that in life that are the most important. And here they are now. We were in Scotland last summer. So my children are very blessed to travel all over the world and experience art and architecture. Caleb's first Lego sculpture was in Interior Design magazine because they asked me what inspired me that week. And that week, his Lego sculpture that said, "I love Mom," was where what inspired me the most. Realize those moments are really a big deal. And this was last week here. This is We Care, which we do with Herman Miller. And this is my team. And if you notice in the middle, Brittany Heim is one of your students that just graduated recently. Well, she is now part of our team. And she is home today because she has a little sick one at home. But working in an office that gives you that flexibility, look for those things. Look for those opportunities. And if you don't get them, ask for them. And realize that people can always say no. What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is you move on and you get the next job. It's busy out there. So, but let people see who you truly are as a person, not just as a designer or graphic designer, or even if your love is like my son, sitting in his room on the computer all day, all night. He doesn't come out. He's a programmer, and that's what he loves. But when he does come out, he's done beautiful things. So anyway, I appreciate you guys coming.